Hello, everybody. I'd like to call to the July 20th, 2022 board meeting to order and remind everyone to please mute your audio when not speaking, as well as state your name prior to making a comment or motion and second for an action item. Thank you. All right, I'll begin by asking each commissioner to please respond with a here when I call out their name. For the last time, Commissioner Bagnell.
I am here.
Commissioner Doan,
I am here.
Commissioner Duggan,
I'm here.
and for the first time, Commissioner Fisher.
I'm here.
Thank you, everybody. All right, we're going to begin this evening by our reports from the Chief Executive Officer and management staff, and I believe this evening Paul will be sitting in for Tom this evening. Paul?
That's right. Thank you, President Sanders. Commissioners, that's right. I will be sitting in for Tom. So on behalf of Tom, I'll go through our management staff report. All right, getting the technology to work for me. I'm sorry about that. So first on the cryptosporidium, a bit of an up spike here. So for the month of June 2022, the Portland Water Bureau reported 7 cryptosporidiumosis detections in the water sample collected from the Bull Run headworks. This requires that they increase the sampling 4 times per week until there are 3 weeks without detections. And for more complete results, you can go to the city's website and they report the information on cryptosporidium there. We had a Talking Water event actually just today, earlier today, which Commissioners Duggan and Doan attended. It was a virtual forum event that we held at noon, and the feature was to highlight involvement opportunities for our citizens. This was an opportunity for the citizens to learn more about serving on the district's rate advisory committee, as well as the budget committee, and to fill board vacancies. So it was a pretty successful Talking Water that we had just today at noon, and thanks to Commissioners Duggan and Doan for your support during the meeting. Quick update on the commissioner recruitment process. So you'll recall that at your July 28th, 2022 special board meeting, you adopted a process to fill the soon-to-be vacant Commissioner Position 1, which becomes vacant, as I understand it, tomorrow upon the resignation of Commissioner Bagnell. So that process is well underway now. So far, we've received 10 applications. We'll continue to respond to additional inquiries and convey information about the commissioner's roles and responsibility to applicants. But I think this does present the board with an opportunity right now, or maybe later in the meeting, to close the recruitment process. I'm going to actually, maybe Clark, I apologize. I didn't talk to you about this before, but maybe you know. I think the recruitment process, the board was going to hold that open until they determine whether you had a sufficient number of candidates. And I think having reached 10, we might be at that point. So I think the board can choose to close it or continue. Is that correct, Clark?
Yeah, that is correct. And I think really it's a discretionary call with the board. If they think they've got an adequate pool, fine. If they want to leave it open, just to make sure that everybody has a opportunity to respond, they can do that too. So it's the board's pleasure.
Okay. Clark, this is Todd Sanders. Can we bring this up and then topics to be discussed by board members today?
Yeah, you can. I mean, you always have the ability to amend and adjust your agenda, to add items, that sort of thing. So I think it's up to you as president to determine where you want to bring this topic up in the agenda for discussion and whatever the direction is.
Okay. So we'll just to inform our other board members, when we get to the section on our agenda this evening with regards to additional topics to be brought up by commissioners, we will address how much longer we want to leave open the commissioner recruitment process.
And Andrea was kind enough to send me a note. In your plan from the 28th of June, you actually had indicated to the public that you'd hold it open until August 1st. So I would
Oh.
recommend that if you do decide to close it, you would close it on or after August 1st.
That's not far from now. So thank you, Andrea, for looking that up for us. Yeah, we'll have that discussion then in the upcoming section.
Very good. And I'd like to turn this over to Bill Richmond, who's our Senior Water Quality Specialist. Bill will present tonight's Safety Minute and the Department Report. Bill, take it away, please.
Okay, thanks, Paul. I think I'm going to take control here so I can control the slides. And here we go here. Can everybody see that in presentation mode?
Yes, we're good, Bill.
Perfect. Okay, all right. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, commissioners, for your time tonight. I am just going to do a brief safety minute.
Actually,
As
Bill,
Paul
can I
said.
interrupt
Yep.
you just for a minute? I started to do this. I'm looking
Sure.
at the presentation. It looks as if Andrea has control of the presentation, so you may need to take control one more time.
Okay. Can you see the first?
I do not have control. I
Okay,
think
go ahead, Bill.
has.
Now you can
I
hit
think
advance.
I think I have it now. And are you looking at the first slide, July Safety Minute, heat-related illness?
Yes, we are. We're good.
Perfect, thank you.
Sorry for the
Okay,
interruption.
no problem. No, just thanks for making sure we're on the right slide here. So yeah, 1 minute about heat-related illness. As we oh, that didn't shift for me. Sorry. Guess I'll do it manually there. Here we go. So sweltering heat of summer can wreak havoc on our bodies, as we learned last summer with 110, 115 degrees. I think we all remember that all too well. Prolonged exposure to heat can harm us and can create heat-related illnesses. So knowing the warning signs, helping us identify how serious it is and what we need to do to respond. So talk just quickly about prevention. Staying hydrated always a good idea. Drinking water is good any time of year, particularly in the summer. Wearing light-colored, lightweight, or loose clothing helps keeps us our bodies cooler. Taking shade breaks when we're working out in the sun or exercising. Finding shade is a really good idea. And this is just a reminder for everybody, never leaving kids or pets in a hot car. And so kind of looking at our diagram here, heat illness is really in two main categories, one being heat exhaustion and the other being heat stroke. So heat exhaustion is the lesser of the two, and the two share some symptoms being one is a headache, two fatigue, and three being nausea. So you can experience any of those when you've been exposed to the heat for too long. But when it escalates to heat stroke, that's when your body temperature can really rise. They say a body temperature over 104 degrees compared to around 100 degrees for heat exhaustion. Confusion can set in. And then one telltale sign is your skin being warm, dry skin is typically associated with heat stroke, and you can still have moist skin when it's exhaustion. So when you've kind of lost that moisture in the skin, it's escalated to heat stroke. So moving on to first aid, this is good for either or. Moving to a cool place as quickly as you can. Removing the excess clothing, applying cool cloths, ice packs, anything cold underneath the armpits, groin, behind the neck, head, feet, things like that are going to bring the body temperature down. And then, of course, drinking more cold liquids if possible. Heat stroke, sometimes you might just pass out from that. So obviously you can't. And if you suspect heat stroke or anything within exhaustion, call 911. This actually happened to my wife a couple of weeks ago. She was coaching a softball tournament down in Newburgh. It was about 100 degrees, and down she went. Luckily, there was other coaches around. Ambulance showed up really quick, got her hooked up to an IV, and she turned out fine. But just a good reminder to employ these, just being careful. We still have a number of weeks left of summer and 90-degree weather on the way. So, and if all else fails, be like Wim Hof and take an ice bath. So I will move on to the Engineering and Operations Department update, PRS monitoring stations. So Process Research Solutions, they invented what they call a PRS station back in about 2006. And TVWD purchased 2 of these just last summer as part of our water system integration project. And really, we're using these. I'll kind of explain how they work over the next few minutes here. And it's just going to provide a lot of investigative data, helps us evaluate water chemistry, basically how it impacts plumbing materials under both current and future source water changes that we're going to be seeing, and what we're experiencing right now and moving on to 2026. So this will include Portland Water Bureau. They're implementing corrosion control treatment changes right now. This started a couple months ago. They've increased the pH of their water as well as alkalinity. And that is, there's a number of reasons why they're doing that. We're starting to see some changes out in the system right now. So this will help us kind of calculate that and kind of work with the numbers and see what that's doing for some of our testing. Stabilization and compatibility of future Willamette source. And then, as mentioned up above, meeting regulatory compliance requirements, most importantly in the lead and copper rule, which you may be familiar with. We do a lot of lead and copper testing from a number of homes, and I bet you Bernice is really familiar with that, as she's been a lead and copper home in our system for, boy, I don't know, Bernice, probably 20 years. And of course, communicating with our Willamette partners.
Actually, more like 38 years.
Wow. Well, yeah, you're right. I've been doing it for 20 years. You've been doing it a lot longer.
I know.
So,
Well, we moved into this house in 1984, and I remember in the fall, Dean Fritzke came to our front door, and he was like, "Hi, how would you like to be part of this program?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know." But
here's a bottle, please fill it. Yeah. So, yeah, good experience there, Bernice. We're going to miss you. We're going to have to get somebody good to fill your home. So where do we put these stations and why? So we purchased 2 last summer, as we said, and we've installed them in 2 places. In this kind of the green surrounded star there on the right in the northeast corner kind of our district. That's the Tufel pump station and reservoir. We picked that particular location because it's fed 100% by the Portland Water Bureau water. And in 2021, now 2022, in the next few years, we're going to see that improved corrosion control treatment change. So it's just a great spot to really look at under the microscope, Portland water, how it affects these metal plates that we'll talk about in just a second. And then moving forward in 2026, it's going to remain 100% source fed by one source, but it's going to change from Portland to the Willamette system. And then the second station that we purchased is installed in TVWD's main office, right by the front lunchroom, if you're familiar. There's a display cabinet on the corner, and that location was chosen because we have blended water, or we could see one of 2 sources right now, it being either Portland or JWC. And in the future, in 2026, it'll still be a blend or one of the other 2 sources, but of course that will be Willamette and JWC. So two starkly different locations, and there's reasons for that, just to see how we will be able to determine the changes due to the different waters. So 4 stations in all were purchased. City of Hillsborough purchased 2. They have one at the Evergreen Reservoir, and another one, I think, over in the Renko Station area. So moving on to when they showed up, they were shipped from the East Coast, and they came on these huge wooden pallets, and we took those apart. We opened them up. There were a lot of pieces. So what we did was we started by assembling the metal plates. And the metal plates, as you can see here, the slide on the left, looks like we have some brass plates there. Those are lying flat. And then our copper plates are kind of sandwiched into like a plastic skewer there. And those are then placed into the plastic rectangular black plates. And so I'll kind of show you on the next slide where those go, they slide into the sampling chambers. And so the middle slide is just showing how we disinfected those. So everything had to be completely clean, disinfected, assembled, and along with the entire station. So the metal plates themselves will be used to simulate home plumbing materials. So there's 4 different types of plates. As I said, brass, and then there's copper, and then there's lead plates. And then the 4th would be copper plates with lead tin solder. So here's our sample chambers. And you can kind of see there that after they were assembled, we slid those down into this sample chamber. So in each chamber, there are 16 vertically mounted metal plates. So 8 on top of 8, all of one material. So hard for me to see. That picture looks a little bit small from my view, but I think those are probably the copper ones. And they're all labeled accordingly just below the chambers, so we know which plates are being monitored in each chamber. And yeah, the 4 different metals there. So the water will sit, excuse me, in these chambers most of the day. And again, simulating home plumbing, but also simulating the use of water throughout the day in a typical home. So we have they're a little bit different, so we could sample on the same day if we wanted to, 2 different locations. But for instance, the headquarters, these sample stations, they have a solenoid at the bottom. I don't know if I can see it here. I think in the next slide I can show it here. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see down there on the left-hand side there, but there's a solenoid that turns these on at 8 a.m. Every day, and the water will run through that chamber. And the photo on the right over there, that shows a meter on top of each chamber. So that will flow at half a gallon per minute for an hour and a half, so 8 to 9 a.m. And then it'll sit inside that chamber, and then it won't run again until 11 o'clock at night. And at night, it'll run for an hour. So again, kind of a surrogate, kind of a simulation of the usage of typical home water usage. And then at the bottom of each one of those chambers, there's a small valve that gets kind of flipped on. And when we go and sample these once per week, that's where the water is drawn out of after it's been sitting for that long period of time overnight. So and just kind of describing the photos here, we had a lot of help from a lot of different departments at the district. We have Dave Stevens and John Rowley there on the left-hand side. They're using sodium hypochlorite to help disinfect the entire skid there. So all the lines leading up to the chambers, through the meters, and throughout. So just making sure that, because we do some microbiological sampling along with the metals testing. So they were super helpful in that. We got the 24-hour contact time. And then the next day we went through and flushed all that out. So everything's clean, airtight, no leaks. Picture in the middle was a cabinet that was actually built by Colin Fleming, our operations and grounds, our buildings and grounds supervisor. He made that himself. It's kind of neat. So right now it hangs over where the shredder was shown in the first picture. We set that up on the wall. It hides all of our reagents and sample bottles and instrumentation. But when we want to use it, it kind of drops down like a drawbridge almost. And yeah, super creative, Colin. So, and the final picture is Roy Kunkel, our SCADA technician, and he made all the important connections with the analyzers that are hooked up to the PRS stations, and we can monitor pH and some of the other parameters remotely. And I think I just have. Yeah, just one more slide here for thanking you for your time, and if you had any questions about the PRS stations.
Oops.
This is Jim Doan. How long do we anticipate doing this? Forever? Or till we're satisfied that we know what's happening with the Willamette? Or
Yeah, great question, Commissioner Doan. We are slated to do this through 2026, at least until 2028 for that 2-year period after the source water transition. But honestly, just depending on, boy, you know what? I think I missed a slide in there. I'm really sorry. Because we get a lot of data from this. So I'll answer your question, and then I skipped ahead a very important slide because we are extracting a lot of important information from these. So Commissioner Doan, at least for, what are we, 2022? So I'd say at least another 6-7 years. It was a really good investment. It came highly recommended from our water system integration Confluence, the business that, or the company that we're working with, our consultant. So I'd say at least another 7-8 years. And if I can kind of piggyback on your question there and just tell you the value that we're gathering from these already and into the future, a lot of data is collected. Free chlorine, total chlorine, pH, conductivity, along with all the metals. Some of this is done actually in the field by our instrumentation, and some of it is just sent to the lab for further analysis. And then we share that information with our consultant. So hope that answers your question.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bill, this is Todd Sanders. Is what you're doing basically baselining in preparation for the changes PWB and TVWD are going to be making?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it, Commissioner Sanders. We're establishing baseline data, water quality parameters, levels that we see. That's why we started in 2021 before the corrosion control. So, pH 8.2 and alkalinity, the lower levels, and then building this database. And then as those parameters change, pH coming up to 8.5 right now and a little bit higher soon to come. And then just monitoring those metals, that metal release, the leaching that's occurring, and then moving towards the Willamette system, just seeing how that release, those plumbing materials are affected. And in a perfect world, we'd have a number of homes that we could go into and sample from the tap. But this just makes it a lot easier for accessing and not bugging customers to come into their homes and see what's coming out of the taps and in different times.
Great. Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
All right. I don't hear any more questions. You did a great job. Thank you for your presentation today.
Okay. Thanks so much, commissioners. I'm sure we'll, as time comes on and time as we make our way towards the transition, if you have further questions, we'll probably have a lot more data to share. So thanks again for your time.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. Our next item is Commissioner Communications, where we will begin with reports of meetings attended. And this evening, we will begin with Commissioner Bagnell.
Thank you. And for the last time, the meetings that I attended on the 28th of June, I attended the special board meeting to deal with, of all things, board resignations and next steps to be taken in light of those facts. And then I have tonight's meeting on the 20th for district business. There was supposed to be a JWC meeting in between these, but that was canceled because Beaverton was unable to have a representative at that meeting. So that's all I have, the special board meeting the 28th and tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Bagnell. Commissioner Doan.
Yes, of course, there's tonight's meeting. And then this afternoon, I attended Talking Water. On the 12th, I attended a webinar on billing assistance. The meeting, bad choice of words, how we can provide assistance to our customers for paying their bills. On the 6th, I attended the JWC pre-meeting for the JWC meeting that never happened. On the 5th, I attended Carl Fisher's swearing in ceremony. And then on June 28th, I attended the special board meeting. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Doan. Commissioner Duggan.
Okay, this month, on the 21st of June, I attended a webinar that was put on by Clean Water Services and the Tualatin Soil and Water Conservation District, announcing a new website that they've put together that is really quite a warehouse, a clearinghouse of information for all things related to the Tualatin watershed. It's a very easy website to find. It's watershednavigator.org. And I was very interested to see how it was put together and what sort of links they have to the actual water providers, drinking water providers. And I'm happy to report that it's a very well done website. They have links to the Regional Water Providers Consortium on water conservation. They have information about how homeowners can deal with stormwater on their property. It's a very good website, and I think it does have opportunities for expanding and improving, especially the connection with the local drinking water providers in the Tualatin Basin. But the beginnings of a very useful resource for our community is there. On the 28th of June, I attended that special meeting that was referenced earlier about the resignation and appointment of board members. On July 7th, I attended the Willamette Water Supply System Board and Executive Committee meetings that I'm sure we'll get updates on later on in this meeting. On the 12th of July, I had a pre-meeting meeting with Tom Hickman, where we talked about tonight's agenda. On the 12th, I also attended the Billing Assistance Program webinar that Commissioner Doan mentioned. And in addition, on the 12th, I also attended the CPO #1 meeting, where we received local updates for CPO #1. And there was a discussion about the cancellation of TriMet's line number 50 that serves the Cedar Mill area. This Monday, the 18th, I attended an AWWA webinar on building a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then tonight's meeting, in addition to the Talking Water that I attended earlier today. That's my report for July. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Duggan. Commissioner Fisher.
Evening, everyone. Well, I guess I attended the swearing in of myself. That was my first official meeting. And then I attended all-day orientation after I got back from a vacation/work trip in Boston, and attended a happy hour put on by the staff to welcome me. And then I'm attending this meeting here tonight.
Great. Thank you very much, Commissioner Fisher. For myself, going back to what seems like an eon ago, on the 21st of June, I met with our consultants, our political consultant, CFM, and Tom Hickman, as we continue to discuss our state legislative strategy for the upcoming fall session. On the 22nd, I attended the Champion Parks Teach PRD event, where TVWD had a tent Tom and I were there and got to watch our real pro do his job. And we just sort of sat back and watched in awe. On the 24th, we did have a Barney Reservoir JWC meeting, but update budget stuff. On the 27th, I met with Tom to talk about TVWD hirings and, of course, the revelation on our status with the board. Then on the 28th, the meeting that everybody has mentioned, which was our special board meeting. And then on the 29th, I had a series of conversations with board members and leadership members on board positions and our next steps. And then on the 1st, I was at TVWD headquarters for to sign Dick Schmidt's book and to gather some mail. And the 19th, which was yesterday, I had a phone conversation with Tom Hickman to see how he was doing. And then, of course, today's monthly board meeting. All right. So that will address our reports of meetings attended. And the next item is our topics to be raised by commissioners. We're certainly going to discuss the open board position in the applicants, but does anyone, before we do that, does anyone have a topic to be raised other than the empty board position? All right, the Dave Kraska 8 seconds is up. So the topic that we do need to discuss as a board is the applicants for the remaining open position, which will again formally be open beginning tomorrow, as we have accepted Commissioner Bagnell's resignation. It sounds as though we have 10 applicants already. There was a presentation today in which there perhaps could be more. I'm first of all absolutely thrilled that we have 10 applicants so far. I think that is fantastic. As Andrea has reminded us, we had talked about an August 1st closing date, which means that by that point, maybe we can lean on her again. I think if I remember right, the plan was to, on the August work session, to go over the applicants. And Andrea, can you
Sure, I
confirm or
can give
deny
you a
that?
recap on the plan that you received on June 28th from
Yes,
CEO
please.
Hickman. So what it said is the notice would be advertised through July 29th. On August 1st, the recorder would distribute applications. So when we did the press release for the opening, we said the first review would occur on August 1st. So I think if we close it that Sunday night, there's really no reason to close it before the weekend, give people a chance to get their applications in. And then on August 8th, there would be a committee conference call. And that's where the evaluation committee would identify a short list of candidates to interview. And then the interviews would be from August 8th through the 11th. And then on the 11th, those recommendations from the evaluation and the interviews would go to the board packet, and you guys would decide on the appointment on August 17th.
And then the initial assessment, did we have any more explicit discussion about how we were going to address the
If so,
applicants?
it's not contained in the memo that he sent. I don't recall. I would say Debbie might be referring back to the minutes from the June 28th.
Okay.
But it was going to be done by a conference call, and the recorder would be sending the applications to each of you to consider before that conference call.
All right. So I believe then in our August work session, we were going to discuss these as a group. Unless somebody tells me I'm wrong. I think that was what we had decided on. And we will then, all of us will receive the applicants via Andrea or whomever via email. So we'll be able to have a first assessment individually. And then when we gather together on the board work session date, we can start to have a discussion. And it sounds like we'll have at least 10 people to look over, if not more. So I'm guessing we're going to see even more. So at this point, I think mostly
So
we just
I have a question.
please.
Looking, obviously it's none of my business anymore, but when I applied to be on the board, one of the things that was really interesting and informative and I thought helpful is that I had a telephone interview with the CEO and the board president, and they each asked me some questions, you know, and I'm sure it's sort of a set number of questions that they asked every applicant, but you know, that was pretty close to being a job interview, and it was an interesting process, and I hope that something similar to that will happen with these applicants, because it would be really interesting, I think, for all of you to hear what the applicants understand about the district's mission and vision, and how they view their participation as a board member. And anyway, like I said, that was a good process, despite the fact that it took place while I was staying at Crater Lake Lodge, and the only place I could get a cell phone signal was in the lobby. So I was interviewed in the lobby of the Crater Lake Lodge, and all these people were staring at me thinking, is this woman crazy?
And you probably was like, yeah, a little bit, but it makes me interesting. Yes, thank you for that, Commissioner Bagnell. And I believe that would be one of our final steps after we do an initial assessment and find probably a group of preferred candidates and then interview each of them to determine who would be invited. Commissioner Doan, you have your hand up, please, sir.
Yes, going back a quarter century, when I was interviewed by the entire board. And I believe they interviewed each of the candidates, although I was only there for my interview. So we've basically done it a multitude of ways. So I think whichever our attorney and you and Tom are comfortable with, we can all abide by.
Yeah. Commissioner Doan, do you have a preference? Would you like to have each applicant be interviewed by each member of the board? What would you like to see happen?
Well, I would like to have pieces of paper in front of me, and then on the basis of those pieces of paper to pick, a half dozen or so that we would actually interview.
Mhm.
I think 10 is a tremendous time commitment, both for the applicants and for the board.
Okay. Commissioner Doan, then a follow-up question for you is, after we have achieved that first step, which I hope we can accomplish during our work session, do you think we should, that every member of the board should interview our final set of candidates? Or how would you like to see that proceed?
I think that would be a good idea. We all have to work with this candidate, and I think that we need to find compatibilities or lack thereof.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Doan. Commissioner Duggan, do you have any thoughts on the processes as we've just discussed them? Not to
I think
throw you into the fire.
uh, have liked hearing what all has been said, and I agree that I think we all need to see um, the 10 pieces of paper or how many candidates we have, the background on them, and then from that group, select maybe, again, half dozen or 4 or 5 of the top candidates to interview together as a board, um, and then make a final selection at that point.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I would like to keep it open until we said we were going to keep it open until August 1st, just because it is summer and people have a lot of commitments going on right now that take them away. I would like to make sure that we've shaken every tree to get the best possible candidate, so to speak.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Duggan. I know that the Talking Water series is so popular that I really do expect that after the presentation today, that we'll probably have a couple more applicants. Commissioner Fisher, I realize you're uh, new to all this. Did you have any thoughts on what you've heard from Commissioner Doan or Commissioner Duggan?
Not really. I'm just looking for, the time commitment involved of, having to go through 10 plus people, however many that may be, might be daunting. So as long as we have some sort of winnowing process to where, however the final interview process goes, whether it's, a commissioner and the CEO or the whole board of commissioners, I think as long as we've had that winnowing process to help refine the candidates, I think we're in good shape.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Okay. Well, it does sound like everybody's in agreement, and thank you, Commissioner Bagnell, for kind of guiding us there. And that's your guidance that will be missed. So soon as you decide Boise's too hot, you just come on back now, you hear? Um, we will then get the applicant information at the beginning of the month. Everybody will have time to process it. We will meet during the work session where we can use whatever personal rubric you have to find a way to reduce the number of applicants to a workable number of applicants. And then we will ascertain some kind of interview process where they meet with each board member, either individually or as a group. We'll see how that works. All right. Well, fantastic. I think then at this point, we don't need to move on anything other than that because we do have the August 1st date set. So I think we can put this to bed for now. Everybody do keep it on their agenda, personal agenda, that on August 1st, you're going to be getting a list of candidates. All right. Moving on to our next item is our public comment. And public comment time is set aside for persons wishing to address the board on items on the consent agenda and matters not on the agenda. Additional public comment will be invited on agenda items as they are presented. This evening, do we have any persons who would like to comment? Okay, I don't believe we have any outside guests this evening with regards to that, so we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is our consent agenda. And of course, consent agenda items are considered to be routine and may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Any board members may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. Any items requested to be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion will be considered immediately after the board has approved those items which do not require discussion. This evening, we will be asking for a consent agenda to approve the June 15th, 2022 regular meeting minutes and to approve the June 28th, 2022 special meeting minutes. Can I please have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented?
This is Jim Doan. I move approval.
Thank you.
And this is Commissioner Bagnell. I will second that.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Doan and Commissioner Bagnell. I'd like to ask our executive assistant to please provide the roll call vote.
Commissioner Bagnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. The motion passes, and we'll move on to our next item this evening, which is our business agenda. We're going to consider approving board officers and committee appointments for 2023. This is going to be led by a combination of myself and Paul. Paul called, I guess, our legal department and our CFO called yesterday to discuss the committee appointments. So is our next slide yes, very good. There we go. We have, as you can see, a series of openings that are going to be created by the loss of Commissioner Bagnell. In particular, the treasurer position, the budget committee, the policy and development committee, and the finance and audit committees, and then some of the external positions with the JWC and the Barney, which are held on the same day, and the West Side Economic Alliance. I reached out to Commissioner Fisher, so this wouldn't be a surprise, to talk about this a little bit. I left him a message. He returned one. We haven't had a chance to talk, but I asked him if he would consider at this time accepting the role of treasurer, with the understanding that the role of treasurer is not overly demanding in terms of time or knowledge. And the other positions, and I'm going to start at the bottom of this list, the external committees, they are not meeting for several months, other than the West Side Economic Alliance, which is an event that's monthly. So the JWC and the Barney, we're not meeting again till October. The budget committee, we're all members of no matter what. The policy and board development committee, according to our CFO, isn't going to be meeting for a little bit yet. And our finance committee and audit committee, we have a little bit of time on. So with that, I'm going to see if Commissioner Fisher, if you have any questions, and if you'd be willing to take on the treasurer position as a committee appointment now that you are officially a member of the board.
Yes, I'd consider that.
Do you have any questions before we kind of stamp your visa on that?
No, not at this time.
Okay, great. So we will be moving Commissioner Fisher into the role of treasurer. And Paul, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So the finance committee and audit committee, when you and I talked, I said that you can feel free to move me over onto that for now, and get us through the 2022-23 budget season. Is that a reasonable plan?
Certainly is. So the finance committee, what we would be asking those members is frankly to oversee our activities on the RAC, not necessarily be the liaisons to the RAC.
Yep.
That would be a separate assignment, but
Yes.
to provide a sounding board for that. And also to present updates on our financial performance and other matters, for example, CIS and those things as they come up. We don't have anything as a burning issue. I will say though that the very mild weather that we had in May and June is leading to a lack of water sales. And so we probably will be talking to the Finance Committee shortly about the impact that's going to have on the district's short-term revenue. But having said that, none of it is urgent. It all can be done in regular order. More or less, we have time, consistent with what we discussed on the phone the other day.
Okay. Thank you. So unless Commissioner Doan, Duggan, or Fisher disapproves, I'm going to replace Commissioner Bagnell on the Finance Committee and Audit Committee for at least for this year. As we bring on the second new member and as Commissioner Fisher gets a foothold on what's going on, we will readdress these committee appointments. Certainly when we reach, May of next year, we can address those in more detail. I would like to ask, and I apologize, Commissioner Doan, for putting you on the spot right now. But as you know, Commissioner Bagnell is the alternate for the JWC Barney, and you're the backup. Would you be interested in replacing Commissioner Bagnell as the alternate on the JWC Barney commissions?
That would be fine with me.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Doan. Again, I apologize for putting you on the spot.
No problem.
I should have probably tried to call you last evening.
One thing I'd like to say is that for the Rate Advisory Committee, I'd like to make sure that you or Carl, who are people who are going to have a long-term commitment to this stuff, go to those meetings so that there's continuity for the next time we do this. It'd be silly for me to be there because I'm not going to be around the next time we do this. I will turn 80 in 2030, and that's not what I want to do when I'm 80.
Understood. Thank you, and your wisdom is well heard. I've actually, again, kind of broached this in my message with Commissioner Fisher. I believe we have the RAC issue later in today's agenda, so we'll talk about that. So just checking in with Paul. Are we good for now, Paul? Do you see anything that needs to be addressed that we haven't addressed after our phone conversation yesterday?
I believe we're in good shape, but I would like to ask Clark Balfour to confirm that.
Legal counsel, please.
Yes, I think we should have we probably should have a motion to confirm these. So
okay. Clark, while we've got you here, do we motion all of them at once, or do we have to motion each one individually?
No, all at once. I think the motion could be something as simple as move to approve the appointments as stated on the sheet with these amendments, and then just list who's in what particular spots. And there's the ones that are going to be left open. We can just leave them open for now.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, then at this point, we are going to then have to have a motion per legal counsel. Can I have a motion, and I apologize for the length of this, to have Commissioner Fisher assume the position of treasurer, to leave the second position of policy and board development committee empty until a later date yet in 2022, to place Commissioner Sanders as the second member of the Finance Committee and Audit Committee, and to place Commissioner Doan as the alternate for the Joint Water Commission and the Barney Reservoir Joint Ownership Commission, and to leave empty for the moment the West Side Economic Alliance primary position.
This is Commissioner Duggan, so moved.
And Commissioner
Doan.
Bagnell, I second.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Duggan and Commissioner Bagnell. Executive Assistant, can you please provide the roll call?
Commissioner Bagnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. That turned out to be much easier than we hoped it would be. We are now moving on to the proposal for new bond ordinance. And once again, our Chief Financial Officer, Paul Matthews, will be making our presentation.
Thank you, President Sanders and Commissioners. And you know, I've often said this to you. I apologize because many of my presentations are quite repetitive. The information I'm about to present you tonight on the bond ordinance is information that we presented at the first reading last month. So this is the second reading of the bond ordinance that will need to continue to finance the water supply program. I'll give you a review of the current situations, highlight the key provisions of the proposed ordinance, and then present a preliminary recommendation. So as I discussed before, the district's current financial plan, the one that was approved by the board in May, anticipates borrowing that is above our current $600 million debt limit that we have in our first ordinance. So we are proposing a second ordinance that will increase that by $100 million. The ordinance that we are looking at tonight has the same provisions as Ordinance 0119, which is the district's current bond ordinance. The differences are, first, it authorizes $100 million of additional borrowing for capital expenditures. There are special obligations. It does allow for refunding. It does delegate certain authorities to management, including to the CFO, the CEO, or designees. It has a reimbursement declaration, which allows us to reimburse the district's cash funds with debt for projects that are being constructed. It's a non-emergency ordinance, which means that this ordinance will go into effect 30 days after its enactment. So where are we with the process? We presented this to the Finance Committee back in May of 2022. They recommended that we bring it to the entire board. We first brought it to the board at the June work session. The board had the first reading of the ordinance and a public hearing on June 15th. We're now at the recommended actions to have the second reading and adoption here tonight at the July 22nd meeting. So our requested action is to approve a motion to read by title only the proposed ordinance 01-22 and then to adopt ordinance 01-22. With that concludes staff report. I can answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you, CFO Matthews. At this time, then, I'd like to ask the board, can I have a motion and a second to read by title only the draft ordinance?
This is Jim Doan, so moved.
And Commissioner Bagnell, I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Doan and Commissioner Bagnell. I'd now like to ask our executive assistant to please provide the roll call vote.
Commissioner Bagnell,
I love being first. Yes.
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders.
Yes. Great. Thank you, everyone. The motion will pass. I'd like to invite staff to read the ordinance title into the record.
That would be me, Commissioner Sanders. Ordinance number 01-22, an ordinance of the Tualatin Valley Water District, Oregon, authorizing the issuance of water revenue bonds.
Very good. Thank you, Barrister Belfour. Is Is that appropriate? All right, with that then, do I have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 01-22?
I think you already voted on it, so I think we're good.
Okay, I'm just following my script. That means we can jump past that. And we can now move to the next item, which would be to consider adopting resolution 10-22, a resolution establishing a process for proposed adjustments to water rates effective November 1st, 2022, with a staff report from our CFO, Paul Matthews.
Thank you, President Sanders, Commissioners. Want to give you a quick financial update, and let me say again, apologize. This is information that you've largely seen both in work sessions as well as when you adopted the financial plan or approved the financial plan back in May of this year. And then propose a rate process that will follow to implement the provisions of the financial plan that you approved. So key presentation elements. First, we're going to review the financial forecast, present proposed water rate increases for November 1st of 2022, and provide an overview of the proposed customer outreach efforts for the rate adoption. The district does, as we've talked about in the past, have a integrated financial management process with interdependencies. It starts with the district's financial plan, which the board approved back in May, the budget, which was based on that board approved financial plan, which the board adopted in June. And now we are talking about the water rates that will support that. And of course, then we've delivered to our customers those items that are within the budget and the financial plan, including the capital improvements and the water that the water and other services we provide. We did present the board several financial strategies, and they balanced risks with those strategies. And I want to take just a moment to talk a little bit about the risks that we face. We have significant risk that the future rate increases could be higher than planned. There are just a lot of unknowns out there. We are at the early stages of some very large capital projects with the water supply system. We have bid a lot of those projects, so that does remove some of the construction risk, but we still have a significant amount of construction risk. We also still need to lay on final financing for some of these, for some of the investment. And of course, that is going to be very sensitive to interest rates, which are sensitive to inflation rates, which will, of course, drive our future rate needs as well. So we're continuing to have escalating inflationary cost, and it's impacting the water supply as well as our current operations. So the cost of fuel for our vehicles has increased just like it has for everyone else. So again, with those risks, we still have quite a bit out there. Our strategy is to increase the financial capacity to access the bonds to finance the Willamette Water Supply Program. So these strategies really are to send an appropriate price signal that we're managing the district's finances prudently, that we're making those decisions that will keep the district solvent and allow it to complete its capital project. We're adopting the rates that will provide the financial resources in advance to avoid shocks as best we can to our customers. If we delay increases and we have very large increases at the end of the program, that would be very disruptive. We're going to continue to refine our customer emergency assistance program. And in fact, later this evening, Andrea will talk about our rate advisory committee appointees, but that is the program that we have. We understand that a lot of our customers can afford these higher rates, but some of our customers and an increasing number of our customers may not be able to afford those. So we're very sensitive to that. We want to make sure that our customer assistance programs can handle that. And we are continuing to pursue federal and state assistance. You've seen this information presented before as well. This is TVWD's share of the proposed capital expenditures by fiscal year. The blue area that you see there is the Willamette Water Supply System improvements. The gray area is the in-district CIP. Important to note that within that gray area that you see, or dark, the black area, whatever color that might be, that it also includes the Metzger Pipeline East, which the Willamette Water Supply program is delivering to the district on behalf of the district, but that's a project that the district is funding entirely by itself. And so it's considered part of our in-district CIP. You can see that our capital improvements are, 300 plus million for the next 2 years. Once we complete the Willamette Water Supply Program, those improvements are scheduled to come down. So that's our current capital plan. We are looking at using additional funding. That's the purpose of the bond ordinance that we just brought to you. In this area, in this chart, we show the bond proceeds that are using. First is our WIFIA loan, and that's the hatched area, the bars that are the hatched area. And now the financial plan includes additional borrowing, which are the white bars. That's really what has grown as part of this financial plan to cover the inflationary costs associated with the Willamette water supply system. We're now looking at somewhere in the order of about $180 to $200 million. I have to emphasize that that's a very wide number because it's going to depend on interest rates. It's going to depend on water sales and inflation rates. There's a lot of factors that are going to drive that number. But in any event, we're programming at 180 million. If we look back prior to this, we thought that number of revenue bonds might be closer to 20 to $40 million. So a large increase in the revenue bonds as part of financing that program. The impact on our water rates, our current water rates are shown here. These are the volume rates charged per CCF of water. That's 748 gallons. We have 2 block rates at the district. Our block 1 rate covers the first 14 CCF per month, or 28 CCF on a bi-monthly basis, is at that lower block 1 rate. For commercial customers, it's everything up to 140% of their 12-month moving average of water. Anything above that 28 CCF every 2 months, or the 140% of the 12-month moving average, would then be priced at the block 2 rate. So we're proposing a 14.25% increase in those 2 rates to bring them to the numbers that you see there. Those would be effective November 1st, 2022. In addition to our volume rates, we also have a proposal to increase the fixed monthly charges. Presented here are the increase in the proposed fixed monthly charges, again effective November 1st, 2022. Those will be the rates on a monthly basis. Of course, most of our customers are billed on a bi-monthly basis. We present them monthly because most customers are billed for their other utilities on a monthly basis, and we want to provide something that's more consistent. If we look at the impact on our customers, for the typical customer, that's a customer that consumes 7 CCF of water, single-family residential customer with a 5/8 by 3/4 inch meter. You're going to see an increase in their typical bill from $61.65 to $70.46. It's presented here in tabular form, the same information. You can see the breakdown between the fixed charges and the volume charge, and you can see that monthly increase is about $8.81 per month by effective on that date, November 1st, 2022. It'll be for charges incurred after November 1st, 2022. Where does that put the district in terms of other water providers? Well, this is the chart that shows how we're going to compare to other communities. And you can see that the district is moving up to the top of the list. And that's purely a function that we are in an investment cycle right now. We're making huge investments in our infrastructure. It's interesting to note that the utility at the very bottom of the list, Wilsonville, was for a number of years at the very top of the list when they embarked on the Willamette River Water Treatment Plant several years ago, back in 2000, in partnership with TVWD. So we can anticipate that we'll percolate to the top of the list, and then over time we'll come back down that list as we complete this generational investment in the water supply program. That same information is presented here graphically. I tend to be a person that likes to see numbers in a table. Some people prefer to see graphically. We've got it both ways in this presentation. So we do have some requirements for adjusting rates. We have some legal requirements, then we have some best practices. And I'm going to talk here about our proposed public process. In terms of our legal requirements, we are required to notify our customers no sooner or no later than, oh, wait a minute, let me get this right. No more than 30 days prior to the public hearing. So we can't do it 45 days. It has to be 30 days or closer to the public hearing when a rate adjustment will be considered. So Our schedule is to consider a rate adjustment at the August regular hearing. If you approve this process, we will then send the postcards out between now and the time of that public hearing. We'll then hold a public hearing at the August regular meeting. In addition to those legal requirements, the best practice is to have open houses to inform customers of the basis for our rate adjustments. We will do that. We've done it in the past. We'll do that in a virtual way, and more information on that to come here in a bit. It's easier through these open houses. It's an easier venue for our customers to provide comments to the board, and we will include those comments in the public record. That's the proposal that we have here. So here's the proposed process. We'll have some virtual open houses using the talk and water format. We'll have one on Wednesday, August the 10th, from noon to 1:30 p.m. And then again in the evening on Wednesday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. The regular meeting is scheduled to be August 17th. We'll have a regular public meeting. You'll have a public hearing where you open the public hearing. You'll receive public comment. We're going to ask that you keep that public comment period open until the end of the month. So as we have our open houses and other opportunities for customers' comment, we'll bundle those up and bring those to you later in the month. We'll have a virtual open house, Talk and Water, on a Saturday on August 20th from 9:30 till 11. And again, hopefully receive public comments. We'll close the public comment period on August the 22nd, and we'll at 4 p.m. So any comments received prior to August 25th at 4 p.m. will be included in the public record for your consideration. And then have the final meeting with a proposal at the September 21st regular meeting of the board. At that time, you would be asked to then adopt the rates. So we do have a proposed resolution. It establishes August 17th as the date for the public hearing. That allows us to issue the postcard and have clear guidance from the board to issue the postcard to notify customers that August 17th is the date. So it authorizes management to issue those notices. It directs staff to conduct the virtual open houses, and it provides that the public comment period will close on August 25th at 4 p.m. So any comments received by that time will be included in the public record. So I'd like to stop here, answer any questions that you may have, and then President Sanders, take whatever action you are, and then I'll come back with next steps based on your actions. If there are any questions, I can answer this for you.
Sounds pretty quiet, Paul.
Okay, well, considering that, then we would ask you to consider adopting the resolution.
All right, thank you. So do I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 10-22, a resolution establishing a process for proposed adjustments to water rates effective November 1st, 2022?
This is Jim Doan, so moved.
This is Carl Fisher, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Doan and Commissioner Fisher. May we ask our executive assistant to please provide the roll call vote?
Commissioner Bagnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. The motion passes. And moving on to our next item, which will be to consider approving an updated
Actually,
rate.
President Sanders, can I just interrupt you for just one moment? I'm sorry.
Please.
I do want to come back and just give you our next steps of what we then will do. So we will mail out the postcards to our customers in July, August. We will conduct the open houses, and we will have the public hearing in August. We'll make all those arrangements, receive public comment, and then have the rates prepared for you to adopt in September. Sorry for the interruption. I'm not sure we actually needed this additional slide.
No problem. Thank you, Paul. Okay. Well, that actually segues far better. into this next item, which is our Rate Advisory Committee member appointment. And this presentation is going to be made by Andrea Watson. So Andrea, are you ready?
I am ready. I'm going to take control of the slides here.
Please do.
And also just would like to thank all of those volunteers who did the 2016 Rate Advisory Committee. That's what the photo is there in the cover slide. So we did start out that process with just about 20, and I think we ended up with about 14 or 15. We got that question today in Talking Water, why we were advertising for 21. When the other year it was smaller. So people are reading the information online, which is terrific. A week ago, we were concerned, right? We started another round of phone calls and emails, and the promotion for the Talking Water did seem to generate interest in both the board vacancy and the rate advisory recruitment process. So through about 2 p.m. today, we've currently received 20 applications. That's quite a bit more than the staff report in your board packet, but we do continue to work past these board packet deadlines. So we wanted to give you the most updated information this evening. We have one special district, Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation, who is indicated they would like to have a member. They need a little bit more time to identify their staff member by name. So we have that slot was one of the desired positions to fill, and we believe it will be filled. We just don't have a name to appoint. We also are satisfied that we have a good representation of members. We sort of looked at the district in zones, geographic zones, and we did work to try to get at least one customer representative from each of those. We have more customers in the Aloha Central region, and we have more in the North Bethany side of Cedar Hill, Cedar Mills, than the other two zones as we identified them geographically, but we did get to at least one in each zone. We also have not closed this recruitment yet, but we are, as staff, recommending that if it's okay with you, we do go ahead and close that. We've extended the first advertised deadline a couple of times, but we still have 2 identified slots. We had one for a industrial or manufacturing client, a customer that's in our customer base, and then another for an HOA, multifamily or like a property management firm. And we have continued to make phone calls on those, but as of today, we don't have a firm date of when the rate advisory meeting is going to happen. So we are asking if the board would be open to the idea of continuing the recruitment to fill those 2 slots up until the first meeting, since there really isn't any reason we couldn't add. But we are getting close to full if we take the 20 applicants, which we are recommending we take those that expressed interest, as well as the THPRD. But again, we know life happens. People develop illnesses, change jobs, relocate. So starting with a little bit more than 20, doesn't mean that the group size is going to be unmanageable. Our consultant that's going to be managing the meetings is from Barney and Worth. We actually have the principal, Libby Bakke, will be running those meetings. So we have a great deal of confidence that she'll be able to handle a group of this size and, maybe any other kind of group behaviors that can sometimes need to be managed. So that's our recommendation for tonight. I'll stop there and field any questions that the board may have about the recruitment process for the rate advisory. Go ahead, Carl, Commissioner Fisher.
Hi, Andrew. I was wondering, with a group this size and with the potential for people dropping out throughout the process, are there any alternates available?
It's really the board's process, so we'll do whatever you would like. I think if we just take the 24 to 26, maybe that we could hopefully get before the first meeting, I think that'll work for itself. I know we've also discussed opening these meetings up and letting the public observe, beyond the participants, but that's why I'm here tonight, is to get the board's, guidance on how they want to do the appointments. It's your committee. We're just doing the staff work for you. So if you want to appoint some of these people as alternates, if you want to phone interview them, whatever process you might like to have, at this point, we didn't see anything in their applications that said we should exclude anybody. They either have expertise or they, have worked in this kind of work before, either professionally. So that's what we're hoping to get tonight, is either a motion to take the 20 applicants we have, or some other alternative process you'd like us to conduct between now and the first meeting.
And can I just add one thing to the discussion here, that in the last rate advisory committee process, Commissioner Fisher, we actually anticipated attrition throughout the process. And that's why we recruited more than what we absolutely needed. And we did experience attrition. We wanted to make sure that we had more than 10 people at the meetings. I think at the end, we ended up with about 13 who remained, which was a good size, which was a very effective size of a group. We are planning on starting in the low 20s. That is a large group, but we do expect some attrition, and again, to let that group gel. And Commissioner Doan, you may want to speak to that because you were there. I see you raised your hand.
Yes, the names, are we gonna get to see the names?
Yes, the names are in the charter. I don't know what was in your board packet. It's my apologies. I have been out of the office the last couple of days. But I certainly could email you or the finance committee, however you want to handle that. We do have a list of all 20 names of the current applicants.
Thank you.
Commissioner Doan, would you like to receive an email with the list of 20 names?
Yes, I think I know some of these people, and I want to say a potential conflict of interest with the people that I know.
Okay. Andrea, could we request that you send a list to all members of the board, please?
Certainly, I can do that here as soon as we're done with this discussion.
Okay. Are there any other questions? So my question, I guess, Andrea, is do you want to close, or do you recommend that we close the applications for the rate advisory committee on July 20th, which would be today? Or do you recommend we keep it open?
I think we should close it to the public just applying, and we should focus on trying to do a focused recruitment for the HOA and the manufacturing slots. But I think if we keep opening it up, I do believe we're going to get to a point where we're going to have to select some. We originally advertised this as a closing date of the 8th, and we extended that 1 week. But then the Talking Water promotion, really kind of made a flurry. So we kept it open through today. It's still open now, but I do think we should close it. Otherwise, I think we do risk, even with attrition, we don't want to have a group that's unmanageable in size.
Okay. Would you advise then we say close it at, say, midnight tonight? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, great. Thank you for that guidance. One other question for you, Andrea. Do we need to assign our board members now, or are you okay with doing that on a later date?
I think as long as we do that prior to the first meeting. Previously, when we did preview this to the finance committee, it was the finance committee that was gonna help guide that, but it's your committee. You can make changes. I know a lot has changed since we first presented the RAC process, so we got to accommodate who can actually participate.
Yep. Commissioner Doan, your hand is up, sir.
Yes, I see no reason to close it now. If we're not going to have meetings for a long time, why don't we leave it open? There's people who went to Talking Water today who may not understand that, at the close of Talking Water, they had 11 hours to get their applications in. I just, why not err on the side of more rather than not?
We did get two. We got 2 more applications today. One of them
Commissioner
was at
Doan?
Talking Water, so.
Yeah, your talking waters are real hits. Let's face it, they work really well. They're marvelous. Andrea, just then for kind of some transparency within the board, when do you expect the first advisory committee meeting to occur?
If I could defer here to CFO Matthews, I haven't heard any vetting of the dates yet, so I'm
Okay.
not certain.
I would anticipate that we would get underway in the September timeframe with the first meeting, which would be kind of that introductory meeting. So if we were to keep this open, we could keep it open through the August board meeting where you'll be considering water rates. And that might give you kind of a clean date. And in fact, I don't know, Andrew, if this is feasible, but we may even be able to put that deadline on the postcard. But if we keep it open longer, one of the challenges we'll have then is that you will probably need to vet that. If we have 45 people volunteering, then we'll have to figure out which 21 you want to keep. So you could set a deadline of August 1st. You could choose something. We'd have plenty of time to get folks set up for that September 1st orientation meeting.
Commissioner Doan, how do you feel about closing this on the?
That'll work for me. I would prefer to hold it till the middle of August, but August 1st is fine. It gives the people who are on the video today the opportunity to get their applications in.
Okay. Andrea, do you see any complications with an August 1st closing date?
I don't. I would just say if you guys could help provide some guidance on at what point do you want to screen the applicants and potentially turn some away? Or do you want to leave it open till the middle of August and just say we're gonna take everyone who applies?
Okay. Commissioner Doan, if we were to close this on either August 1st or August 15th, 17th, and we have 40 applicants, what would you like to see as a process? We can't, I believe what Andrea is suggesting is we can't work with 40 applicants. We would have to winnow that down.
You know, I hope that is a problem we have. I think having 40 applicants would be just great. And we can winnow it down, or we could rent the Aloha High Auditorium. You know, I think it would be just fantastic. I mean, the thing that I said at the Talking Water is that when we went into this, when the board went into this in 2016 or 2017, we had ideas about what the rate advisory committee was going to do. And you know what? They didn't do it. We were much more concerned about the impact of rates on low-income people. And the rate advisory committee didn't dismiss that, but they were more concerned about other things, which we didn't consider. So I think the more people involved in this, the better, to the point that it gets to be unmanageable. I don't want it to be unmanageable, but I think if we get more than we need, then we figure out a process to reduce it to the number that we need.
Yeah, I think that's what Andrea is hoping we give her, is some idea of what will that process be, so we don't overwhelm our meeting director. I don't know the right word for the person running the meeting. The facilitator. There we go. So we don't do the facilitator, nor do we get bogged down with a bunch of talking and over talking with one another. So we're looking for some guidance on how do we do down to a manageable number, and any idea what a manageable number is.
So our professional facilitators suggested that manageable number is 21.
Okay.
With the idea that there would be attrition and it would bring it down into the mid to low teens.
Okay.
Might I offer this as a suggestion? We have two alternatives. One is to actually go through and evaluate the candidates and select them. Another one is to do it on a first come, first served basis, which is to say we hold it open until we get 21, with holding these two positions for the HOA, multifamily, and the manufacturing. And if people come subsequent to that and it puts us over the limit, then we simply would say we took the first 21 that we had. Or as an alternative, we have the board appoint the two RAC liaisons, and we sit down with the staff and we go through those and make a final recommendation of which of the volunteers that we asked to participate in the RAC. The others would be invited to attend as a member of the community, but they wouldn't necessarily be part of the facilitated sessions. So two approaches. One is sort of first come, first served. The other one is we get the RAC liaisons, sit down with them, go through and make a pile of sort of first choice and second choice.
And that's kind of the dilemma, Paul, is that we have 20 now. If we did first come, first serve, they're all in. And then we add the Tualatin Hills Park and Rec, we're at 21. So if we hold these other two slots open, then we're at 23. I mean, but the other thing that we can do is we did divide the district in zones, right? So Paul's approach, you could sit down with the liaisons and we could just randomly select out of the group in that zone and say, we're going to take 3 reps from this zone and 2 or whatever, to try to get more equal representation, because we certainly do not have equal representation in the zones right now. And I'll send that in the email so
I'm
you can all
back.
look at it. But we don't have to make a decision tonight, other than if you want to wait until August, then I think we can move through it that way. And we have other commissioners who want to speak. So I'm going to be quiet, sit on my hands.
Commissioner Fisher, your hand was up first, please, sir.
So I'm on a city board, and what the cities typically do is they have their set number, that their goal that they've met, and then they let anybody else who still wanted to come to the meetings and be involved, they become the alternates, and they have a voice at the meetings, but they don't have a vote on anything. And then as people, as we know, will drop out of this committee, those folks are then in a position, if they want to be, they could join the committee then. So that would be a possible solution if we get, 35, 40 people, make the people beyond our set number alternates and say, please come and participate. And then if there's an opening, we'll move you up.
Excellent. That's an excellent recommendation, Commissioner Fisher. Commissioner Doan, you also have your hand up, sir.
Well, I think just going for the minimum number is silly. That's not the way democracy works. The more people involved, the better the decisions.
Mhm.
So that's where I'm coming from. To just stop it now because we have the number we thought we needed, I find that abhorrent. It makes it easy for the staff. But that's not what this water district is about. We don't make things easy. We make things right. And I'm sorry, but let's not sell the population short here. If people want to participate, let them participate. And if Carl having idea of having them as alternate, I think that's an excellent idea. I just don't think if we'd have set the number at 2 and we got 2 applicants, would we have stopped? I don't think so. I would hope not anyway. So let's let this thing run.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Doan. Commissioner Bagnell, your hand is up.
Yeah, one of the things I may have misunderstood, but I think I heard Andrea say that right now we don't have really good representation across the district. And to me, that is a really good reason to follow Commissioner Doan's suggestion of keeping the recruitment open for a while, and let's get all comers, and let's see if we can get broader representation across the district. And let's also look at Commissioner Fisher's suggestion of keeping people on the list as alternates. I really would love to see, and obviously it's none of my business anymore. I won't even live in the state anymore, but more representation seems better.
Okay. Well, I hope, Andrea, this isn't creating a lot of work for you, but it does sound like the board is proposing that we extend the date out in hopes that we do two things, that we get a better representation of each of the regions within the district, and that we get a good democratic representation of people who are interested in having their voices heard during this committee. So in summary, would it be something of the order of let's leave this open until the mid-August, I think it's August 17th board meeting? If we leave it open until the August 17th board meeting, that'll give the rest of as many people as we can. Hopefully we'll get good representation. The second thing would be then we could ask Andrea to utilize your zone definition to see if we get a good representation from each zone, and that those people be given initial priority in the 21 or so initial participants, and that all members who contact you be invited to observe, and then following Commissioner Fisher's suggestion, be invited to replace anyone who drops out during the rate advisory committee meetings in the fall.
Yeah, that's very doable. And I do agree with the sentiment that the more people, the better results we're going to get. The meeting is on the 17th, but materials are due, to be prepared prior to that. So if we could give ourselves, a couple of days to amass the names and their qualifications and their zones, that would be really helpful, not just to staff, but so that the people who do put their applications at the end of the open period, that those get the same attention as the ones we have now.
Okay. Do you have a date? Would that be August? Let's see. So that's a Wednesday. Would Friday before that, which would be
Yeah, that'd
about
be
what,
fine.
the 13th or so?
Yeah, August 12th.
August 12th.
Mhm.
If we make August 12th, then the
Yeah.
cutoff date.
Yep. And that'll be
Oh.
good timing with your board interviews too, because you'll be through the screening of that and you can look at the screening of this separate.
Okay. Marvelous.
Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andrea.
Yeah. Thank you. This is great.
Yes. Excellent. Before then okay. So I'm reading my script. The last thing then we should probably do is appoint our board members to the rate advisory committee. Understood the initial intent was to have the members of the finance committee participate, which would be then Commissioner Duggan and now me. In lieu of that, this was one of the things I left a message for Commissioner Fisher for. I wanted to see if Commissioner Fisher would be interested in participating as the board member along with Commissioner Duggan. So he would get an opportunity to hear from our constituents and have a good feel for how our future is being directed by our customers. So Commissioner Fisher, would you be interested in being the second member of our rate advisory committee representing the board?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And Commissioner Duggan, by default on the on the finance committee, you were to be a member. Are you still amenable to that, sir?
Given the other options, yes, I'm still amenable to it.
Thank you. And of course, Commissioner Doan, there's nothing saying that that you cannot also participate in this in any of those issues with regards to either review of the other member of the citizen members or even participating in the meetings themselves. There's no reason why we can't have more than 2 board members participating in the rate advisory committee, knowing your passion for this issue.
Commissioner Sanders, I do want to point out one thing. We do want to be conscious of a quorum requirement. So that will be something that if we have 3 commissioners there, we'll need to treat the meeting somewhat different. I'd have to defer to Clark on the difference there. I think it would become a board meeting potentially.
Okay. I keep on calling him Barrister Balfour, but I
If
think
we
that's a
were
probe.
if we were 300 miles north in Canada, you could, but we're
Okay.
not. But it's close enough. So Paul's right. There is often a question as to whether or not you have a quorum present when board members attend a meeting but don't participate in it. But the fact is, this advisory committee is just that. It's an advisory committee to you. And so they're going to make a recommendation to you. I would prefer that you never have more than 2 commissioners present at any one RAC meeting. So
Okay.
thank you.
Understood. Thank you for that guidance. That's important.
This,
Okay.
this is Jim Doan. I would prefer not, because I'm full of ideas and I don't want to delay this committee. I have been here before. New people, particularly Carl, need to be able to carry the ball forward, and I can get by without this one. And
Okay.
that was the reason that it seemed to me to have Bernice and Jim Duggan on the committee initially, was to avoid the quorum issue.
Fantastic.
So I'm perfectly okay with that.
Great. All right. Thank you,
Not that
Commissioner
it's my
Doan.
decision, but I'm perfectly okay with it.
Great. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Doan. All right. Then I think we can finally reach the point where we have a motion. Again, I apologize. It sounds like this is going to be a little bit long. I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to approve an updated rate advisory committee charter and appoint members to serve on the 2022 rate advisory committee. The board members will be Commissioner Duggan and Commissioner Fisher. We will continue to leave the application date for citizen members open until Friday, August 2nd. And at that time, it will close and we will have the 2 board appointed members along with the leadership team discern who the 21 primary participants are, but invite all members that applied to observe in the rate advisory committee oversight. Paul?
Yes, just to be very clear, I think you said Friday, August 2nd. It would be Friday, August 12th.
Did I say 2nd? I hope I said 12th, but I might have said 12th. So I amend that and say August 12th. Thank you, Paul. Can I get a motion?
This is Jim Doan, so moved.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Bagnell, I second.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Bagnell, Commissioner Doan. Executive Assistant, can we please provide a roll call vote?
Commissioner Bagnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders.
Yes. And hopefully you recorded all of that, Catherine. The motion passes. Fantastic. It's been a long day today. We're down to our last few items, which are addressing the local control board. So our next agenda item is to acting as the local control review board, consider resolution 1122, a resolution amending the local contract review board rules division 120-010. I'll let Clark take it from here. Clark.
Thank you. Yes, this is you convening as the local contract review board to make a proposed amendment to your rules by adopting proposed resolution 11-22. We have rules, as you know, for procurement of goods, services, public improvements, all sorts of things. We're given the authority by the legislature to exempt certain classes of contracts or to place them in categories that give us additional flexibility in structuring that contract and in how we award that contract. And in the division 120-010 rules, we have a list of those sorts of things, commonly recurring services that we need, and often services that require the cultivation of a longer term relationship because there are strategy provisions involved with those types of vendors, lawyers, auditors, accountants, those sorts of folks. And in looking at the exceptions that we had in the past, in the fairly recent past, we added municipal financial advisors because that was going to be something that was particularly important to the Willamette Water Supply Program. But as President Sanders mentioned earlier in his recap of the meetings, we have meetings attended. We've been working pretty significantly with CFM to provide strategies and government affairs services in the legislative context, both state and federally. And in looking at our rules, this type of contract probably fits within these exceptions for class special procurements where we can have that extra flexibility. So our suggestion to you tonight is that you adopt this resolution, which would amend our rules to add this class of contract to the nature of special procurements. And with that, I'm free to answer any questions.
I think the Dave Kraska 8-second rule has been met. Clark, just again as a summary, this has to do with dealing with government affairs, public policy, and communications as a special class special procurement.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So not hearing any questions, may I ask for a motion and a second acting as the local contract review board to adopt resolution 11-22, a resolution amending the local contract review board rules division 120-010 to add government affairs, public policy, and communications as a class special procurement and to approve a contract with CFM Advocates. Ooh.
So this might be my last chance ever to say this. This is Commissioner Bagnall. So moved.
This is Jim Doan, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Bagnall. Thank you, Commissioner Doan. Clark, is your hand up? Did I do something wrong?
No, you're fine. I have my hand up because when this matter concludes, I have one more thing that I need to talk about on an unrelated matter.
Great, thank you. In that case, I'd like to ask our executive assistant to please provide the roll call vote.
Commissioner Bagnall,
Yes.
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders.
Yes. Okay, the motion passes. Clark, you said you had to bring up one more issue this evening, please.
You know, I'm going to apologize to everyone in advance because I made an error earlier tonight. We had the motion to read by title only. I thought I heard in that motion that we were also adopting the ordinance, and so and then I went back and read it, and we didn't. We approved the motion to read by title only, and as your script so accurately stated, President Sanders, we also needed a separate motion to adopt Ordinance 01-22. So if I could ask you, someone, and you know, Bernice, maybe this is your real last opportunity to make a motion. If we could have a motion to adopt Ordinance 01-22, we would close that loop, and I apologize for this inconvenience.
Oh, it's no problem. Thank
So-
you for correcting it. Can I
So
have a
my other
motion?
one was the penultimate motion, and now this. I move that we adopt ordinance 01-22.
Do I have a second?
This is Commissioner Fisher. I second.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Fisher and Commissioner Bagnell. Executive Assistant, could we please provide the roll call vote?
Commissioner Bagnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Doan,
Yes,
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders.
Yes.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you, Clark. And before we adjourn, just want to once again wish our friend, colleague, and board member and ex-employee and member of the leadership team and one-time chief financial officer of Tualatin Valley Water District, Bernice Bagnell, and her husband, Clark. You know, a wonderful life and future ahead of them in the wonderful city of Boise, Idaho. Bernice, we hope you find it too hot and you come right back.